Now, today's top stories and Power of 5 weather from News 5. Sponsored by Akron Children's Hospital.
Good Sunday morning, Northeast Ohio, on this time-adjusted 13th of March. A place where it seems time is standing still these days is, of course, overseas in Ukraine, where that war is now in its 18th day. President Biden upping the ante on Friday by revoking Russia's most favored nation trade status. That allows the U.S. to impose tariffs, taxes on goods that would be imported from Russia, and makes it tougher for Russia to do business. This was something that both of Ohio's U.S. senators were calling for when I spoke to them this week at length about the situation. To this point, the U.S. and its NATO allies have walked a fine line between supporting Ukraine and its people without becoming directly involved in the conflict. There's been financial aid to the country, and its military successes have been tied to the U.S.-supplied anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles. But Senator Rob Portman believes
we need to do more, and we need to do it faster.
Portman disagrees with the Pentagon and supports supplying Ukraine with Poland's Soviet-era MiG fighter jets.
I spoke to the Polish ambassador. They'd like to go forward with this. The United States needs to step up and help.
Portman's been in contact with Senator Sherrod Brown. Both believe economic sanctions need to be ramped up.
We know we need to continue to inflict pain on the Russian economy. Their economy is in shambles and getting worse.
With the White House warning that Russia could use chemical or even nuclear weapons, I asked both if that would be a so-called red line that would draw the U.S. through NATO in.
Well, I think all options need to be on the table in terms of keeping Russia from doing some of these unthinkable things.
I don't think that NATO nor the U.S. wants to paint a line, say, you cross this line, we're coming in. I think we reassess each time.
In a News 5 Twitter poll, 40% of you said the U.S. should invoke more non-military actions, with nearly 12.5% saying we should send armed forces. When asked on Facebook what would need to happen for you to support U.S. military involvement in the war, Brenda writes, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not a fan of being a part of World War III. Benny adds, if we didn't enter on day one, it's not our fight. Support is all we can do, so the answer is nothing. Jamie said it would take an invasion of additional countries. Other than that, nope. It's sad, but it's simply a conflict between two nations. Learn from history, but understand it happens. And it's not our fight until he starts expanding it. Whatever the U.S. does do next, Senator Portman says it needs to happen now.
There's more we can do, and we got to do it fast. Unfortunately, it's a matter of days and weeks, not months, and sometimes, the bureaucracy moves too slowly.
Senator Brown says whatever steps we take moving forward, they need to be as they have been, with the consensus we've built with the international community.
We need to continue on that path. I know the Ukrainian community in Cleveland supports that. Senator Portman and I continue to work with them in a way that gives them a little bit of comfort in an absolutely awful time for this country.
And of course, stay tuned for This Week with George Stephanopoulos for the very latest on the situation. Well, this coming Friday is March 18th, an important date on the political calendar because that is when military and overseas absentee voting begins. Though the state this week got an extension on that. Either way, early voting begins for everyone 3 weeks from Tuesday. And last we checked, the Ohio Supreme Court still hasn't ruled on challenges to state legislative and congressional maps. Secretary of State Frank LaRose telling me yesterday he doesn't have the luxury of waiting on them.
The law says that it is my responsibility to conduct an election on May 3rd. I don't get to set that date, the General Assembly does. I don't get to set who's on the ballot. And so I've said this is like the kid that thinks tomorrow's going to be a snow day and then doesn't do his homework. Well, that could turn out bad. Well, we could have a snow day where the court invalidates the maps, or we could have an election on May 3rd. The plan right now is that we're going to be ready to have an election on May 3rd because we're not going to be caught flat-footed.
Well, this week marks for the first time since 2019 the return of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. A popular spot downtown is always the Jack Casino since it opened its doors. Believe it or not, March has been its busiest month of the year, year after year. This week, they released big numbers for February. The question is, will it continue into March? Despite reduced hours, reduced slots, and table games for a part of 2021, it was a record-breaking year for Ohio's casinos and racinos, momentum that is continuing into 2022. Gambling revenue figures just released for the state's 4 casinos showed an 11.3% jump in February over last year. The 7 racinos were up 13.7%.
I mean, if we look at where 2021 went from, beginning with a lot of uncertainty and ending with the greatest year on record for commercial gaming, it makes sense that momentum has continued into January and February, and I'm glad to see Ohio doing so well.
You might think that Cleveland saw a boost from the NBA All-Star game, but they were only up 9.9%, a point and a half off the state average, which can happen when there are so many other things happening around a spectacle like this.
I don't think we're really second fiddle. 10% growth is pretty impressive, however you shake it. But I think there are a lot of entertainment options that go kind of that are adjacent to a big event like an all-star game.
Most interesting to note in Cleveland was that while slot machine revenue was actually down 1% year to year, table game revenue in February was up nearly 24.5%. Speaking to the types of gamblers in town and also the easing of COVID restrictions that cleared the way for more tables to be added to accommodate them. Despite the strong start, though, 2022 is seeing a headwind that wasn't there a year ago. Inflation as a whole, led by soaring gas prices, with Americans spending $250 million a day more at the pump than they were just a month ago, something the industry as a whole will be watching.
Certainly, people have a limited amount of discretionary income, and I think that will no doubt impact how they're choosing to spend and what they have to spend on their entertainment options. I think it's a little too early for us to tell what that might look like, but certainly something we're keeping an eye on.
And we'll see the March numbers when they are released on April 7th. With Democracy 2022, I'm John Kosick. Enjoy your Sunday.
Sponsored by Akron Children's Hospital.